Son planned to turn off his mother's life support at the hospital to get over his house, but what he didn't expect was that Dona Mary, at 65, is a dedicated and resilient woman. She works as a cleaner in the company of George, an influential businessman, to support his son Charles and grandchildren after the death of Charles's wife. Despite her advanced age and constant joint pain, Mary does not stop working, knowing that she is the family's main source of income. She lives in a small apartment along with Charles and their two grandchildren, Brian and Natalie. 15-year-old Brian is quiet and reserved, while 8-year-old Natalie is a girl full of energy and hope. Dona Mary does her best to fill the void left by their mother, taking care of meals, schoolwork and keeping the house in order. Charles, on the other hand, has been visibly dejected since the loss of his wife. He spends his days looking for temporary jobs, always returning empty-handed. Frustration seems to eat away at his soul, making him distant and increasingly cold. He avoids prolonged interactions with his mother, avoiding arguments about bills and money. His only visible concern is going out drinking in the local bars, where he laments his luck. Mary tries in every way to bring her son back to family life. "Charles, why don't you stay home tonight? The kids miss you," she suggests, as he pulls out his keys. He looks away, saying, "Mom, I need to get out. I'm going to find some friends who can help me find a job." Then he walks out the door without saying goodbye. At her job, Mary finds some peace in the company of Lisa, her employer's fiancée. Lisa has a calm temperament and a friendly attitude, but recently she has been restless. She approaches Mary one afternoon and whispers, "Mary, can I trust you?" Mary smiles gently, "Sure, Lisa. What's bothering you?" "It's George. Something is not right. He acts strangely and avoids talking to me about certain subjects. I'm afraid he's cheating on me." Mary is silent for a moment, pondering what she could say. She had known George for many years and knew he was ambitious, always looking for opportunities to expand in business. However, she also knew that he was reserved and rarely shared his personal life. Cautiously, she advises, "If you have suspicions, maybe you should look for someone who can find out the truth. A detective, perhaps." Lisa seems reluctant at first, but the idea begins to gain traction in her mind. "You're right. I need proof before confronting him." While Lisa faces her dilemmas, Charles is busy hatching his own plans. He sees his mother's fragility as an opportunity to take her possessions and free himself from the responsibility of caring for her. In secret, he approaches some acquaintances at the local hospital, trying to get information about doctors who could be persuaded to act according to his interests. He plans to convince doctors to turn off life support in case his mother needs to be hospitalized. While Dona Mary maintains her work and domestic care routine, Lisa's suspicions about George deepen. She decides to follow Mary's advice and seeks out a private detective named James. A middle-aged man with a discerning eye and a notebook full of notes, James accepts the case and begins his undercover investigation. He follows George discreetly for several days, observing his patterns of behavior. In a chance encounter with Dona Mary, James shares some of his concerns. George is a shrewd man. He knows how to cover his tracks, but no one is perfect. Meanwhile, Charles feels the pressure mounting as his finances take a turn for the worse. The rent for the small apartment is late, and the few temporary jobs she finds do not cover the expenses of the house. Frustration begins to turn him into a shadow of the man he once was, and he returns home more often with his breath laden with alcohol, becoming increasingly irritable towards Brian and Natalie. Dona Mary observes her son's emotional decay with a mixture of sadness and helplessness. She tries to convince Charles to focus on finding a stable job, but each conversation results in fervent discussions. "Do you think I'm not trying, Mom?" he shouts, slamming the bedroom door. The grandchildren watch everything silently, always seeking the comfort of Mary, who does her best to offer stability, although her own health is beginning to show signs of wear and tear. However, with each passing day, the situation at home becomes more untenable, and the tension between Charles and Mary increases. Charles begins to manifest his intention to free himself from his mother's responsibility by planning his scheme carefully. He digs through documents and tries to understand the financial details of Mary's accounts, wondering how he could take full control of the inheritance if she were no longer there. Lisa, on the other hand, eagerly awaits James' reports. The detective finally returns with a series of photos and testimonies that confirm his suspicions. George is having an affair with a coworker, Rachel. Shaken, she confronts George, who tries to defend himself. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Lisa. My job demands so much from me." Lisa, teary-eyed, replies, "Do you think that justifies breaking the trust of someone who loves you?" George finds no words and instead leaves the house in a rage. Later that night, he returns drunk and locks himself in the office, while Lisa takes refuge in her room, wondering how she should proceed. The growing tension is affecting everyone, and the secrets and hidden intentions of each of the characters begin to emerge. Donna Mary continues to try to keep the family together, even when Charles ignores her and George leaves Lisa devastated. She finds herself pulled in multiple directions, not realizing that her own son is the one watching her most closely, evaluating how to implement her terrible plan. Lisa spends days mulling over the evidence of George's affair with Rachel, her heart torn between resentment and a desire to find a way to understand her fiancé's motives. "Did he ever love me?" she asks herself in front of the mirror, as she tries to compose herself to face another day. But George seems to be in total denial, refusing to discuss the details of his betrayal with Lisa. He maintains a facade of a business-focused man, acting as if nothing is out of place. However, on the few occasions when he meets Donna Mary in the corridors of the company, he looks away, embarrassed. He knows that she is close to Lisa and fears that she could become a dangerous ally in the fight for the company's reputation. Donna Mary, on the other hand, does not want to get involved more than she already is. She has more pressing concerns about her family. Charles is increasingly restless, frustrated with the lack of job opportunities. He spends his nights trying to understand Mary's financial papers, but gets lost in the numbers and bureaucracy, consumed by anger. On a sultry night, Charles finally vents his frustration by throwing the papers on the floor of the small apartment. Brian, the eldest grandson, leaves the room when he hears the noise and tries to talk to his father, but is greeted with a hostile look. "Go to sleep, Brian. That's none of your business." Donna Mary witnesses the scene and feels her heart weigh even more. She knew Charles was dealing with unresolved grief, but the signs of a deeper disturbance were beginning to manifest. She tries once again to approach him, but his words fall on deaf ears. "Mom, you don't understand. I just need time. Trust me." However, time is not something Charles has. He begins to make visits to the hospital, observing the movement of the employees, looking for someone he can count on. He meets Paul, a nursing technician, and tries to gradually gain his trust with stories of his difficult life. Paul is sympathetic but cautious, and Charles realizes that he will need to be more convincing. While Charles orchestrates his dark plan, Lisa turns to Dr. Julian for emotional support. The doctor is an empathetic man with a firm stance, who has always admired Donna Mary for her dedication to her family. He tries to reassure Lisa, but realizes that something is wrong with her health as well. "Have you been feeling weird lately?" he asks. "Yes, Dr. Julian. I have dizziness and nausea. I can barely eat or sleep." The doctor decides to perform some tests, suspecting that Lisa may be being poisoned. He confides his concern to James, the detective, who continues to keep a close watch on George. Mrs. Mary does not realize what is happening to Lisa, as she is distracted by her own family problems. She watches Charles becoming more anxious and distant, while Brian and Natalie deal with domestic tensions the way they can. However, his heart, already fragile, begins to show signs of wear and tear. Tension increases, and everyone feels the impact of the choices and secrets kept until then. Donna Mary, overwhelmed by family responsibilities and pressure at work, begins to feel a growing discomfort in her chest. She ignores the symptoms, attributing them to age and stress, but the pain becomes more and more frequent and intense. She doesn't want to worry Charles or her grandchildren, so she keeps going, doing her job with the same dedication. Charles, for his part, continues his plan in silence. He knows that Dona Mary's health is deteriorating and begins to prepare the perfect scenario for his mother to need to be hospitalized. He relies on Paul, the nursing technician, to monitor her health and finds another more vulnerable employee, Mark, who works in the hospital's administrative area. Charles begins to approach Mark, offering financial help in exchange for insider information about the doctors and the ICU routine. Mark, reluctant at first, ends up accepting the offer. He goes on to provide Charles with details about the doctors in charge of terminal cases, particularly those who seem more flexible in difficult decision-making situations. Meanwhile, Lisa becomes increasingly suspicious. She notices that her health conditions are worsening and follows Dr. Julian's advice to perform more detailed examinations. The results confirm the doctor's worst fears: Lisa is slowly being poisoned. Heartbroken and frightened, she begins to piece together the puzzle with the help of James, the detective, who has been following George's steps for weeks. With Dr. Julian's support, they discover that George has been manipulating Lisa's food and drinks, slowly adding doses of poison to make her sick and appear fragile. His intent is clear: to get rid of it before it can assert any rights or damage its reputation. While Lisa, James, and Dr. Julian hatch a plan to unmask George, Dona Mary suffers a heart attack. She is immediately taken to the hospital and admitted to the ICU, where Charles tries to persuade Paul and Mark to speed up the process of turning off life support. With Mark's help, Charles contacts the ICU doctor, Dr. Alfred, pretending to be genuinely concerned about his mother's suffering. He paints an emotional picture, describing how the old woman fought hard, but now she should rest. Dr. Alfred, however, hesitates upon seeing Dona Mary's stable condition and decides to involve Dr. Julian in the discussion. Dr. Julian, knowing the story of Dona Mary and seeing the coldness in Charles's intentions, immediately opposes the idea of turning off the devices. "Your mother still has a chance to recover, Charles. We cannot make this decision hastily." Charles tries to argue, but meets resistance. He knows his conspiracy may be in jeopardy and tries to rush Paul and Mark, but they too begin to back down. Lisa, upon learning of Dona Mary's hospitalization, goes to the hospital and meets Dr. Julian, who updates her on the situation and expresses his concerns about Charles. They decide to work together to protect Dona Mary and prevent Charles from carrying out his plan. From that moment on, the bonds between Lisa and Dr. Julian begin to strengthen, driven by the mission to protect Dona Mary and ensure justice. The tension comes to a head, with Charles realizing that he is losing control over his conspiracy. He feels the pressure mounting, but he's not willing to give up so easily. While Dona Mary fights for her life in the hospital, Charles sees his plot begin to fall apart. He notices Paul and Mark's hesitation, and his grip on them weakens. He tries to push once again for Paul to move forward with the preparations to turn off the life support, but the nursing technician begins to doubt Charles's intentions. "Charles, she's still reacting to the treatments. She can recover," Paul argues, cautiously. "There's no way, Paul. She is suffering." "It's better this way," Charles replies, forcing a more emotional tone. But Charles's words lose strength, as Dr. Julian has already expressed the need for continuous care for Dona Mary. Lisa, now aware of George's intentions and Charles's nefarious plan, collaborates with James to collect evidence against both of them. She and the detective begin to investigate George's past and find evidence of a pattern of betrayal and manipulative behavior, which he used to exploit partners and prevent his business secrets from being revealed. In addition, James finds bank documents that link George to suspicious transactions with Rachel, the co-worker with whom he was having an affair. The transactions reveal monthly payments from George to Rachel, strengthening the evidence of his infidelity. At the same time, Dr. Julian continues to treat Lisa, advising her to avoid any food or drink offered by George. He also involves James in Lisa's safety, recommending that she stay away from George as much as possible. Dr. Julian and James form a reliable liaison, exchanging information and hatching plans to expose George and Charles's crimes. Meanwhile, Charles, feeling cornered and seeing the plan fall apart, tries to get closer to Dr. Julian. He creates an air of genuine concern and, with a contrite countenance, pleads, "Doctor, my mother is all I have. What can we do to help her?" The doctor stares at him with an imperturbable expression. "Charles, your mother needs treatment and care. Turning off the appliances is not an option." The words sound like an ultimatum to Charles, who walks out of the room with clenched fists and mutters, "That damn thing will see." Dr. Julian keeps a close eye on Charles's behavior, aware that he may try something riskier. He tightens security around Dona Mary, ensuring that Paul and Mark follow proper procedures. Lisa, encouraged by Dr. Julian and James' support, decides to confront George with all the evidence gathered. She finds him in his office, where he initially tries to smooth over the situation. "Lisa, this is all a misunderstanding. Rachel and I were working together on an important project." "Project?" Lisa counters, tossing the photos and bank statements on the table. "Is this a project? You tried to poison me and dishonored our relationship." George tries to deny it, but Lisa doesn't give him room to dodge. She walks away, and James intervenes, stating that all evidence has been turned over to the police. George despairs, knowing that his lies have finally been discovered. Pressure mounts on Charles and George, as Lisa and Dr. Julian plan their next steps to fully expose their crimes. As the pressure mounts, George and Charles feel the siege tightening. George, already aware that Lisa has unmasked him, desperately tries to find a way out of the legal and social abyss in which he finds himself. He meets up with Rachel in a low-key cafe and advises her to leave town immediately. "You need to disappear for a while," he says urgently. "They are surrounding us. The police will interrogate me, and you could be next." Rachel, initially reluctant, realizes the gravity of the situation and agrees to flee, taking with her money and documents that George provides, but the investigators are already keeping an eye on both of them. Meanwhile, James and Dr. Julian make sure Lisa is safe and prepared for the legal battle to come. They tighten security around her, with James staying by her side to make sure George or his cronies don't try to make contact. Dona Mary remains hospitalized under intensive care, but her condition is beginning to improve. Dr. Julian and his medical team maintain surveillance, ensuring that Charles does not approach his mother unsupervised. Still, Charles tries to find loopholes in the system, pressuring Mark to help him access Mary's medical records. Mark, however, fearing legal repercussions, refuses and cuts ties with Charles, which leaves him even more isolated. With the evidence gathered, Lisa and James decide to act quickly. They contact the prosecution, providing documents and testimony that incriminate George and Charles. The prosecutor, Dr. Rachel, builds a solid case, initiating the subpoena process. George is arrested at home, resisting and claiming innocence, but the evidence is overwhelming. His expression of incredulity at being handcuffed mixes with anger when he realizes that Lisa is next to Detective James, watching everything. "You're making a mistake," he shouts. Soon after, the police go after Charles, who is found in a bar, trying to drown his fears in drinking. Desperate, he tries to flee, but the officers quickly capture him and take him to the police station. He is confronted with all the evidence that proves his intent to get rid of his mother, as well as his suspicious contacts inside the hospital. While George and Charles face endless interrogations, Lisa and Dr. Julian focus on Dona Mary's recovery. They spend more time by her side, talking and making sure she has everything she needs. Dr. Julian remains vigilant, aware that Dona Mary's full recovery will require time, both physically and emotionally. The hospital becomes a place of safety and support for all, but also a symbol of the battles waged against George's abuse and Charles's greed. The medical team, inspired by Dr. Julian's example, redoubles their efforts to ensure that Dona Mary receives the best possible treatment. The grandchildren, Brian and Natalie, also feel insecure and afraid of what will happen to their father, but the comfort and support of Lisa and Dr. Julian help them understand that justice must prevail. With Charles and George now behind bars, Lisa and Dr. Julian turn their focus to Dona Mary's recovery. The days in the hospital are long and silent, filled with the sound of machines monitoring his every heartbeat and every breath. Dr. Julian makes daily visits to the ICU, making sure the medical staff is providing the best care. Lisa, in the midst of the emotional turmoil of having been betrayed and poisoned, spends hours at Dona Mary's bedside, keeping her hands clasped and whispering words of encouragement. While Dona Mary struggles to recover physically, Brian and Natalie, the grandchildren, feel lost in the maelstrom of events. Brian, older and quieter, processes his father's arrest privately, but Natalie, being younger, struggles to understand why her father is not present. She seeks refuge in the arms of Lisa and Dr. Julian, finding comfort in the reassuring stories and love they share with her and Brian. "We're going to be together, Natalie," Lisa says, holding the girl tight. "You'll always have me, Dr. Julian, and your grandmother." As the days pass, Dr. Julian observes Lisa and notices the growing bond between her and Dona Mary's grandchildren. He is moved by the way she strives to support them, even with her own scars still fresh. He sees a resilient heart in her and decides to offer more than just medical support. "Lisa," he begins one morning, as they walk through the hospital corridors, "I know this has all been very difficult for you. I want you to know that you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you, not just as your doctor, but as someone who cares." Lisa smiles gratefully. "Thank you, Julian. Your help means a lot to me. I don't know how I would have gotten through all this without you." Days turn into weeks, and Dona Mary finally begins to show signs of recovery. Your awakening is a relief to everyone around you. She opens her eyes and finds Lisa and Dr. Julian by her side, holding her hands. "You are here," she murmurs, her voice faint. "Of course we are," Lisa replies tenderly. "We've been waiting for you, Dona Mary." The grandchildren visit her in the room, and Brian, holding back tears, says, "Grandma, we miss you so much." Dona Mary hugs Brian and Natalie, promising them that they will be home together again. However, she also feels the pain of the betrayal of her own son, Charles, and needs the support of Lisa and Dr. Julian to deal with it. The legal proceedings against Charles and George move forward, and Lisa is called to testify against both of them, recounting in detail George's plot to get rid of her and Charles's actions to seize Dona Mary's inheritance. Dr. Julian also testifies about the symptoms of poisoning that Lisa suffered and the pressure Charles put on the doctors to turn off life support machines. In the end, the courts decide that George and Charles must serve long sentences. George is convicted of attempted murder and business fraud, while Charles is sentenced for attempted murder and conspiracy. As the men face justice, Lisa and Dr. Julian stand by Dona Mary's side during her recovery, offering her the support and love she so desperately needs. They become stable figures for Brian and Natalie, caring for them as a close-knit family struggling to overcome the pain of the past. With the processes completed and George and Charles serving their sentences, the lives of Lisa, Dr. Julian, Dona Mary and the grandchildren begin to enter a more serene routine, although punctuated by recent traumas. Lisa and Dr. Julian, united by their common purpose to support Dona Mary and provide a new family structure for Brian and Natalie, realize that their bonds go beyond friendship and commitment to justice. They share not only worries and challenges, but also laughter, moments of affection and the small gestures that make the days more bearable. The grandchildren, under the attentive and loving gaze of the couple, find a sense of security that gives them hope for the future. Brian, who used to be reserved and full of worries, begins to open up to Dr. Julian. "Do you think I could be a doctor one day?" he asks shyly. Dr. Julian smiles. "Of course. A good doctor is someone who cares about people, and you have that care." Natalie, with her contagious energy, spends more time with Lisa, helping her organize the house and even choose the right ingredients at the market. "Aunt Lisa, I want to learn how to cook with Grandma." Lisa and Dr. Julian begin to share plans for the future, and on a quiet afternoon at the hospital, Dr. Julian plucks up the courage to talk to Lisa about his feelings. "Lisa," he begins, "these last few months have been tough, but you've shown me what love and resilience mean. I know I couldn't have faced this without you. I would like us to build a life together as a family." Lisa is thrilled. "Julian, you have been my safe haven. He is the most upright and generous man I have ever met. I do want us to be a family." They marry in a small ceremony, with Donna Mary as the guest of honor. She smiles with her eyes shining as she sees Lisa and Dr. Julian exchanging vows, holding Brian and Natalie by the hands. The couple's union brings a new beginning for everyone, with their love providing the stability that everyone needs. Donna Mary finally returns home, still feeling the effects of her prolonged hospitalization, but with the support of Lisa, Dr. Julian and her grandchildren, she rediscovers the joy of living. She watches as the family grows closer each day, the laughter filling the house and the chatter around the table over meals, warming their hearts. She also finds a new purpose, turning her passion for cooking into a personal project that helps her feel alive again. While Lisa and Dr. Julian take care of Brian and Natalie as if they were their own children, the family forms again, stronger and more united. The house that was once marked by tension and uncertainty now shines with love, forgiveness, and a promising future. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until the next story.